Thank you very much, Chairwoman Sanchez, Mr. Franks, and the rest of the subcommittee. I appreciate so much you're holding the hearing today on for members of the National Guard and Reserve who face bankruptcy when they return from service. Let me depart from my written statement and reply just briefly to Mr. Franks. You know, when Congress first passed in 2005 the new Bankruptcy Act, Congress did have the wisdom to exempt disabled veterans from the means test. And so we see this as a very narrow addition to that, to add the Guard and Reserves as well. And I couldn't agree with you more that we should do all that we can to prevent a situation from these heroes having to face bankruptcy in the first place. But having said that, we know that some will. And so this is to address those, and we don't know how many, although we know, as the Chairwoman said, since 9/11, more than 460,000 reservists and guardsmen have been called to active duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, and a quarter of those more than once. These men and women have left their jobs and families to answer the call, often with little or no notice. Service members who own and operate small businesses put their businesses on hold, sometimes sacrificing them altogether while they serve their country. Many service members face unexpected extended tours of 15 months or longer, leaving them with almost no way to prepare financially. You mentioned, Mr. Franks, those who lose money when they go on active duty, but it also works the other way, too. The means test that veterans who file for bankruptcy has a particularly adverse income on some of them because, again, as the Chairwoman mentioned, combat pay of soldiers in Iraq or Afghanistan may be higher than their salaries at home, and they have fewer expenses when they're overseas. So that when they return home, these individuals face lower incomes and higher expenses, and because the means test factors in a person's income and expenses for the 6 months preceding bankruptcy filing, sometimes a veteran's income is artificially inflated and their expenses seem unduly low. And as a result, they risk failing the means test and facing Chapter 11 or Chapter 13. So our bill would simply allow the National Guard and Reservists to file for bankruptcy without the burden of the means tests. We have 46 co-sponsors and 14 Republicans. It's a bipartisan piece of legislation, and it would only apply to the heroes who have served in the armed forces for more than 60 days since September 11, 2001, and would exempt them from the test for up to 180 days after they return home. I'd love to be able to tell you how widespread the problem is. The Veterans Administration reports that veterans have difficulties finding a job in the first 2 years after they return home, and that they're more likely to earn lower wages. And today's Washington Post ran a front-page article in their business section on how bleak the market is. 18% of veterans recently back from tours of duty are unemployed. And of those who have been able to find work, 25% earn less than $22,000 a year. There are also currently 1,500 veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan who are homeless, and thousands of veterans return from the war with physical and mental injuries which make returning to work difficult or impossible. The Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs assists many veterans who face financial hardship, and I'd like to ask unanimous consent, Madam Chairwoman, to insert statements into the record from caseworkers who too often assist veterans facing financial collapse. If I could put those into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Our legislation would help returning servicemen like Jeremy W., a hero from my state, who was deployed from March 2006 to 2007. June of 2007, he's a member of the National Guard who, like many others, asked not to be identified because of the stigma surrounding financial problems. After he returned, he didn't want to be away from his family. He decided not to return to his previous job as a truck driver, instead opting to take a lower paid job. He now works 6 days a week to pay his bills and is teetering on the brink of losing his house. The men and women who have risked their lives to protect us deserve protection in return. These selfless individuals should not face harsh bankruptcy procedures if they are in financial distress when they return home, even after we've tried to help them. And so when changes are made to the bankruptcy laws, they were for the disabled veterans, we hope that we'll do the same for the reservists and National Guard. Thank you.